a sound breaking out, Lord, for all that you've done. And now we're turning our hearts to you. And oh, we'll never stop loving you. Come on! This will be the best time of our lives as we encounter your love again. Here with you our hearts will come alive as we declare your praises. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Come on! As we declare your praises. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. From the start, here we are to collide with your love. Hey! Every heart set apart just to be where you are. And now we're turning our hearts to you. We'll never stop loving. Come on, let's praise Him tonight, play it, shake it. This will be the best time of our lives as we encounter your love again. Here with you our hearts will come alive as we declare your praises. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. As we declare your praises. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Come on, put your hands together. This is our time.
This is our time. This is our place. So excited to be on the Ryan Crossley Show one more time to talk about what's going on in our world and see how we can make a difference. But this is our time.
This is our moment to lift your name.
One of my favorite parts. All right. We'll bring that down and we'll start the show. Welcome to the Ryan Crossley Show. We're so excited that you're back here with us. We've got so much going on that we've got to stay on top of. I've got some important information I want to share with you. And we're going to try and get through as much as we can in this next hour. I want to just take a moment to thank everybody that connects through the different pages on social media. We're thankful for those that connect to Iglesia La Roca de Hollywood. And we're so glad. Xiomara Escobar, Javier Mejia, gracias. Thank you for being connected. Also, under the radio page, we are so thankful for José Luis Riaño Cerón. Que Dios le bendiga. And then Mia Arias Palacio, Dios le bendiga. And then one of my most faithful followers, we love her to death, is Michelle Aquino Franco. In fact, let me just say this. I think I'm going to give a shout out to Michelle and her husband, a great couple. I mean, you talk about great people. You can't get any greater than Luis and Michelle. But a lot of the graphics that you see on this show, the backgrounds and flyers or things that come out from this show or from the radio, the responsible party for a lot of that is Michelle's husband, Luis. So we're very thankful, and thank you, Michelle, for letting your husband help us out from time to time. So, all right, let's get into this. There is way too much to get into. Way too much to get into. And I just want to give you a brief. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the whole Ukraine-Russia thing. I have my own very strong opinions about it, okay, as far as what I think is really going on. This is, in some senses, nothing new. And in other senses, it could be a domino that causes a lot of problems. Nothing new in the sense that Russia and Ukraine have always, since the dissolving of the Soviet Union, there's always been tension. One of the reasons some people are asking, why? What is Russia's interest in Ukraine? Well, basically, there's a couple things that we can analyze and some things that we really don't know. One, if you remember, the USSR, the Soviet Union, it was comprised of many countries that now are independent, like Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and obviously one of those is Ukraine. And so they gained a certain level of independence. And I think there's always been that feeling of recovering what was once the Soviet Union. And Vladimir Putin is no weakling, whatever you might think of him as far as his politics are concerned. He's not a weakling type of person. He's a very strong leader for his people and for his country. And I think there is an undercurrent of wanting to gain back things that were lost. The second thing that I think is probably much more of an issue is if you look at the Ukraine-Russia border, it's 1,200 miles of border. That's a long border. And Ukraine is leaning and has been leaning to the West for a long time, even been very vocal about wanting to be a part of NATO. Of course, one of the requests or one of the demands that Putin has is that Ukraine would never be allowed to be a part of NATO. So there's that. There's Ukraine is leaning west, and if you can imagine Russia, in their mind, they're thinking, okay, we're going to have 1,200 miles of border with a country that is west leaning, which is who our enemies are. And so nobody's going to want 1,200 miles of border that could potentially put somebody right on your doorstep if you were ever to get into a conflict, which we are seeing right now, because that's actually what is kind of happening. But so this, in some senses, is nothing new. Russia's aggression, I think they flex their muscles, and they have always kind of done this. There's a second aspect of it. When I said the domino is, unfortunately, the reason why Russia can even feel emboldened to do this is because of the weakness of this presidential administration. And that happened in Afghanistan. When we saw Afghanistan, the chaos and the disaster that was the withdrawal of our troops from Afghanistan, that was such a stain on America's way of doing things. We have never been quite that incompetent. I mean, we haven't done everything great, but we've never been quite that incompetent with what would have been a pullout of our troops from a situation like Afghanistan, and not just pulling the troops out. Understand some of that. Even Trump wanted to do that, but the leaving of billions and billions of dollars worth of our own military equipment in the hands of terrorists, and watching the terrorists. I don't know if you've seen the videos, but it is absolutely infuriating to watch the terrorist Taliban do parades down the street with our military equipment. So when that happened, folks, I mean, the chickens do come home to roost, as they say. When that happens, the world sees you for what you are. You're not making good decisions. There's weakness. And so what happens is they're going to flex their muscles and see what you're going to do. And I honestly feel that's exactly what Vladimir Putin is doing. He really kind of wants to see what the U.S. is really going to do. Now, Russia is threatening. It's not now us threatening them. Russia has demands, and they are threatening the U.S. and NATO allies if those demands aren't met. Now, what would ever make Vladimir Putin think that he can make demands? Well, several things. The Bidens have been in bed with Ukraine for a while. We learned that through Hunter. And, there's other interests there that we don't even probably know all of the layers of that onion. We also know that all of the connection with Russia was through the Clinton campaigns. So there's just a whole lot of aspects there. But the reason that Vladimir Putin is, in my opinion, and I qualify it, is that he knows that this administration is weak. And so he knows that he can make demands. And it proved the other day when President Biden did the press conference, a disastrous press conference that was supposed to help his poll numbers and make him look better. But Sleepy Joe, as Mr. Hannity says, couldn't get through the press conference without several gaffes and weakening even more our position. He said that, if there was a minor incursion, in other words, if it's just a minor invasion, it's just a minor invasion, we'll see how we respond. Well, when you say something like that, that just emboldens people like Vladimir Putin. So I think he's pushing to see what the U.S. is actually going to do in respect to the threats that they're doing. So they feel emboldened to have demands, and there's we're just going to see what's going on there. Now, I will tell you something else, okay? And this is off just some of my my editorial page. I learned something, and it's nothing new. It's out there. There's others that are listening to the show that probably knew this, but I learned something yesterday or day before yesterday that I thought was quite interesting. And I'm a pastor. This is a political show per se, but I also try and bring some spiritual perspectives when I see them, when I'm looking at things in light of the Bible or in light of what the Word of God says about nations and powers in the last days. And I thought that there was something very, very interesting about this Ukraine situation. I'm just going to throw it out there. Like I said, I learned about it a day and a half ago, or not learned about it, paid attention to it a day and a half ago. So I have not had the time to research it the way that I should, but I am going to throw this out there on the spiritual side of things. Very, very interesting point that I want to make here, and I want you to think about it. Ukraine has a very unique situation that I don't know of any other nation that would have this. And the point is this: President Zelensky is Jewish, and the Prime Minister of Ukraine is Jewish. Ukraine has the third largest Jewish population outside of Israel. I didn't know that. And on the spiritual side of things, you heard me just a moment ago say a domino. On the spiritual side of things, I'm wondering if this is a little bit of a domino for what is to come in the future with Israel and the nations. It is the only, here's what's interesting. Ukraine is the only country outside of Israel whose top two leaders are Jewish, and also having such a large Jewish population. Now, there is, obviously going all the way back to World War II and thereafter, there is a lot of history of anti-Semitism that they have had to deal with. And right now, even in the UN, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the UN, but we haven't seen Israel in the news as much lately, but you need to pay attention to Israel in the news, because the UN is actually rising up against Israel to try and set up like investigations into Israel, and it is a anti-Semite movement. And I have always, anybody who's a Christian listening to this show, I have always been blown away with the hatred of Israel. With when you look at Israel, Israel is really done nothing to anybody else other than defend their people and their homeland, which they should do. They should defend their people and their homeland. And so I think that there's another spiritual aspect to this Ukraine and Russia thing, and that is if it moves forward and there is a major invasion and the Jewish people are in some way or another involved, which they would be. I don't see how they wouldn't be. I would be interested in how Israel would have to respond. And if Israel responds against powers like Russia, it will be an interesting domino if it falls. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think that there's a aspect here that nobody is even looking at, and that is on the spiritual side of things, the Jewish aspect and presence in Ukraine. And just like Michelle's responding here, I'm looking at you there on the comments. That's exactly how I felt about it. I look at the news and I look at the politics and I give my opinions. But when I saw that, I thought, oh my, look at this, Lord. Because I know I'm getting off target here, but if you look at the way that world wars start, world wars always seem to begin through what I would call proxy battles. What's a proxy battle? A proxy battle is I'm the United States. I want to fight Russia, but I can't just come out and directly fight Russia. So how do the United States and Russia fight each other? Through a proxy battle. It can be something like Ukraine, where Russia wants to attack Ukraine, and Ukraine is asking for the United States to help defend them. So the subject there is Ukraine, but it's really not. It's Russia versus the United States. It's like Taiwan and it's like China and the United States and Taiwan. The battle is between China and the United States. Taiwan can do nothing against either one of the powers. Taiwan can do nothing versus China, and Taiwan can do nothing versus the United States. So the way that these superpowers in the world work is they fight proxy battles, and that's how world wars get started. If you look back at how Germany started both of World War I and World War II, the proxy battles came through Poland. It came through other countries and their interests. Now, none of those countries had the power to defend themselves against the might of the oppressors. So what do? They acquiesce, or they request help from the other world superpowers. So something like Ukraine, it can become a proxy battle between Russia and the United States. And right now, Russia's ties with China are stronger than they've ever been, and China is not going to ally in any way with the United States. So it is quite possible that if the United States takes this on, we already know that China has been buzzing airplanes in Taiwanese airspace, and that they are testing their hypersonic missiles. And we've even got Rocket Boy over in North Korea now. He knows that there's nobody going to do anything to him, so he's back at his old antics that he did not do during the entire 4 years of Trump's presidency. But he's back now testing missiles. So what's going on? What will happen? Why is Ukraine important? It's nothing new in some senses, but it can be a domino in other senses, because Ukraine can become the proxy nation through which these more powerful nations begin to battle. And if these more powerful nations begin to battle through that, then and then it changes. And that's where, to me, the Jewish connection comes in. Because if there's imagine this, if there's a proxy battle between West and East, right? The Eastern powers being Russia and China, the Western powers being the United States and its allies. If there is a battle, a proxy battle between these powers through Ukraine, and what do you have in Ukraine? A huge Jewish population. You have Jewish leadership, and so that involves Israel. So there's a very deep, in my opinion, there's a very deep spiritual aspect to this that we need to pay attention to as Christians. And look, I've got right here in front of me. And it's funny how things tie together. I saw this a day and a half ago, right? So I was like, oh, wow, look at this. I didn't know this. I didn't know that Zelensky was Jewish. I didn't know the prime minister was Jewish. This is interesting. Now, on the front page of one of Fox News's articles, I mean, an hour ago, I'm sitting here in the show, and this pops up on my screen an hour ago. Here's the headline: Kamala Harris to attend inauguration of incoming socialist Honduran president with anti-Semitic ties. I mean, I'm sitting here talking to you guys about the Jewish connection, and boom, pops up on my news feed here, because I obviously follow a lot of different news feeds here, here we go. Our vice president has no problem attending the inauguration of a socialist president-elect who has very controversial anti-Semitic ties. So I haven't even read the article. That's just the headline. But I guess the president, he's a very wealthy landowner, was deposed from his presidency. I'm not going to try and read the article here in front of you, but here we go. There is our vice president is they're supporting somebody who is known to have anti-Semitic ties. So here you go. Where will the Jews find themselves as this rolls out? So I thought that was very interesting. If I was you, I'd just you might not have been paying attention to that aspect of this conflict, but pay attention to the Jewish aspect of the conflict, and let's see where it goes from there. And hopefully, we as Christians are to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, the Bible says, and we really need to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. The Lord told Abraham, those that bless thee, I will bless, and those that curse thee, I will curse. And the United States has always been Israel's largest supporter. But I'll be honest with you, the last two Democratic presidencies, especially under Barack Obama and now under Joe Biden, it is not so pro-Israel. And that is scary to me, because it can bring the curse of God upon our nation. And we do not want that. We need to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And it's just amazing how all of this stuff is lining up. And I pray that we would be aware. And here's the thing about it, folks, is we now, the United States, is viewed much weaker than it ever has been. We have never had such a weak image in the world as what we have now. And you've got world leaders like Vladimir Putin and President Xi. They're like sharks in the waters. They can smell the blood, man. They can smell the blood in the water. They know that Joe Biden is more interested in social agendas and all the wokeness and all the stuff that, all that type of thing, much more focused on that, much more focused on pushing CRT in schools, much more focused on all the vaccine mandates, mask mandates, all that kind of garbage. And they're like, man, they're like sharks in the water. They can smell the blood, and they're going to test it, and they are testing it. And we have not passed this yet. We're not passing this test. One of the most disheartening things in the Afghanistan situation was not just the poor leadership from the president, but it was also the poor leadership from the generals. I was shocked at that because I felt like, man, if there's anybody they should stand up for our troops and should stand up for what is right and what is the best decision to make, should be the generals that are putting they're there with those soldiers. They know what the consequences can be. And going back, just one last thought on Russia. Russia is not like China as far as an economic superpower. Russia is what it is worldwide because of its nuclear power, its military power. Oil is the largest source of income for Russia. That's Russia's focus is oil. That's where they make their money. That's why when Donald Trump was in office and we were energy independent, Vladimir, you can threaten all you want, but we don't need you. We don't need your oil. Well, with President Biden in office, we are back buying a lot of oil from other countries and importing. And so just to give you an idea, I'm reading something here. President Trump, under him, the price of crude oil was $39.90 a barrel in October of 2020, $39.90 a barrel. And now the same barrel of oil is $85.43. So that's the problem. Problem is, because of shutting down the pipelines and things of that nature, right now, Russia knows that they are in a stronger position than they were in the previous presidency. So just keep an eye on it. I want you to see that. I think it's very, very important because there is a Jewish connection there, which I thought was interesting. Also, I was reading something in the jewishpress.com. You can go to their website, jewishpress.com, and I thought this was interesting. There's a article that says Jerusalem to demolish Dome of the Rock replica mosque, not the actual Dome of the Rock, but there is a replica mosque in a neighborhood called Beit Safafa, and it was built before 1948, and it's basically kind of a duplicate. It's a copy, or it resembles the Dome of the Rock that you can see in the old city when you see the famous pictures of Jerusalem. And so they're going to tear this thing down, and you know how that can be just a firestorm, right? It can be a major firestorm. So there's a whole lot going on there. Well, I have an announcement to make as you are listening to this show. I'm going to go through something here that, I'm obviously very vocal on the whole mandates, the vaccine stuff, but I have an announcement that you're going to, I really hope people paying attention. Let me just say this. On the way to this show this morning, driving down the road, and we've all heard the commercials for all these weird named drugs that they invent to help you with all kinds of stuff, right? And the commercial always goes the same way. It has people walking down some beach or something, and it's telling you about how this drug is going to help you with whatever situation you have. It could be depression, it could be anxiety, kidney stuff, cancer, whatever. It's got, what I'm talking about. And then in the last 20 seconds of the commercial, the speed of the person talking goes fast forward and tells you all of the side effects and all of the horrible things that can happen. And then a lot of them even say, and it can cause even death in some situations. And so you listen to this beautiful commercial about a drug, and then at the end it tells you all the way that it can kill you. And then this morning, I was listening to that, and then the person that was on the show was talking about the recalls that have been made on so many drugs. I'm talking about drugs that have been out on the shelves in our pharmacies, and after several years, they will discover that causes cancer. You'll see the lawyers, the class action lawsuits all the time on TV. If you were, if you got mesothelioma, then you got to, call this number, class action lawsuit. Why? Why is that? What is that all about? Well, what has happened, there's been a drug on the shelves. There's been something that the pharmaceutical companies pushed out there, approved by the FDA, by the way, to be able to get out there. And years down the road, they realize, hey, this thing is dangerous. This thing is causing cancer. This thing is causing sterility. This thing is causing kidney failure. And so we've all seen it, folks. We've all seen it to where something's been out on the market for years and then remember the Johnson & Johnson baby powder just a while back. Goodness gracious, how many decades, folks, how many decades have we been using the Johnson & Johnson baby powder? I know that we used it on our kids. I know that they used it on me. I mean, when I was a baby. And then here we are all this time later, and they say, hey, Johnson & Johnson baby powder has some components in it that are causing this, that, and the other. And so it gets recalled, and all the investigation starts. And so as that was, I'm sorry, but as that was playing, I thought, oh, really? This is interesting. So we will recall these drugs that after years, we've been able to see the side effects of what they have caused. And it's not immediate, mind you. It's something that over time, enough of it happens to where it's like, hey, this is dangerous. We need to pull this off the shelves. So with that said, here we go. I have an announcement to everybody that is listening. You ready? Here's the announcement. And I'll just tell you right now, hold on. I gotta stop here, because if I say this, I run a risk. So right now, you are listening to me on the Rock Church Radio, Radio La Roca, 106.3 FM. So if you're in Broward County, you can probably hear me, 106.3 FM. You can hear me on the airwaves. If you are on social media, you are watching this on the page of Radio La Roca, and you are watching it on the page of Iglesia La Roca de Hollywood. And if you're on YouTube, you're watching this on the Iglesia La Roca de Hollywood page. So, we're using these platforms, but it's dangerous, right? Because whenever we say anything that these platforms don't like, they can shut us off or they can censor us. This happened happened again to Senator Rand Paul. He was on a show, and he's a doctor, much more qualified than I am. And he was saying some things that one of the big tech companies, I will not mention them, but we're on them, that they didn't like, so they shut him down. And they shut down the interview. So it is possible. I'm warning you right now. It is 9:32. It is, let's see, 9:32 there, 9:35 here. I don't know. My clocks don't match. But I am warning you that when I start to talk about this, it is very possible, okay? It is very possible that it'll get taken down. I hope not. And I hope they don't shut me off while I'm talking about it, because it's very true. I'm not saying anything that is not true, okay? Nothing that is not true here. So whether they want to hear it or not, it's true. And but just in case, for some reason I'm cut off, you can go to our website, and you're not going to see video, but you will be able to hear the audio. You can go to our website, larocamia.com, ROCAMIA.com, larocamia.com. You can go there, and there's a button up there that says Radio La Roca. And if you click on that, it should bring up a player where you can click play and listen to the audio, okay? I'm just throwing that out there just in case anything happens. I think we need to definitely get on multiple platforms. I know a lot of people are going to Rumble and Getter and things like that because of the same. I mean, it's crazy, absolutely insane that people who are I'm talking about well-known just terrorists, bad people. They can spew their garbage on these mediums of communication and not be censored, and yet you tell truths that somebody does not agree with or they don't like, and all of a sudden you're censored. So let's go. Here we go. You ready? You ready? Ready? Drum roll. The COVID vaccine is now. The COVID vaccine, or the COVID vaccines, okay, are right now the most dangerous vaccines in human history, and that's not by a little, that's by a long shot, okay? Let's go. Let's talk about what the most dangerous vaccine of all time was pre-COVID. The most dangerous vaccine of all time pre-COVID was the smallpox vaccine. The smallpox vaccine was known as the most dangerous vaccine of all time. So let's read this. Now, for those in big tech, I mean, I hope that you just be honest and let me get through this article. If you don't let me get through this article, then you're just shutting people down for the sake of shutting them down. But 20 years ago, the television show 60 Minutes, which is run on CBS, 20 years ago, 60 Minutes ran a story. And the name of that story, I talked about this yesterday, but I felt, that's my Spanish audience. So I'm talking about English audience today. 20 years ago, 60 Minutes, which is a TV program on CBS, very famous, one of the most famous TV programs of all time. 60 Minutes ran a story, and it was entitled The Most Dangerous Vaccine. And at that time, there was a doctor named Paul Offit, and this is what Paul Offit said in that interview 20 years ago. He said, "We know if we immunize 1 million people," this is with the smallpox vaccine, "that there will be 15 people that will suffer severe, permanent, adverse outcomes, and 1 person may die from the vaccine." So out of 1 million people immunized, 15 severe adverse events and 1 death, says Dr. Paul Offit, one of the country's top infectious disease specialists, and he knows all about vaccines that prevent those diseases. This is in the interview. In his lab at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, he studies and creates new vaccines. There's nothing new about the smallpox vaccine. The smallpox vaccine was created in 1796. I mean, can you imagine that? Not what our liberty was declared in 1776. So just 20 years after the Declaration of Independence, the vaccine for smallpox was created. That's how old the smallpox vaccine is, 1796. And that vaccine created in 1796 says this, Dr. Offit said, the vaccine used today for smallpox is essentially the same as the vaccine that was in 1796. We tend to think of vaccines as being very safe and very effective, which they are. But all the vaccines that we use today are the result of modern technology. That's not true of the smallpox vaccine. It has a side, please listen to this. This is Dr. Paul Offit saying this about the smallpox vaccine. He says that's not true of the smallpox vaccine. It has a side effect profile that we would not accept for vaccines today. Oh, really? Oh, really? So what he is saying is, out of 1 million immunizations or vaccines administered, 15 severe side effects, 15 people with severe side effects, and 1 death. And Offit said that is unacceptable. Did you get that? Offit said 15 severe side effects and 1 death per million doses is unacceptable. We would not accept that standard for vaccines today. Oh, wow. Okay, now that's interesting. Because according to multiple independent analysis, the death rate from the COVID vaccines used in the U.S. is at least 400 deaths per million doses. And because now fully vaccinated means 2 doses, that could even translate to 800 deaths per million fully vaccinated. Do you remember what it said about smallpox? 1 death out of 1 million. With the COVID vaccines, up to a possible 800 deaths out of 1 million. That makes the COVID vaccines the most dangerous vaccines in human history ever created. They are 800 times, at least 400 times, but maybe up to 800 times more dangerous than the smallpox vaccine with respect to death, and over 25 times worse with respect to permanent disability. Now, I am going to read something to you. This is you can go to it. This is data from Health and Human Services. There is a CDC disclaimer on its own site. So that you can go to openvaers.com. They are reports from the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. Our default data reflects all VAERS data, including the non-domestic reports. Non-domestic. So let me see. Oh, that's all. Here we go. Let's go. All non-domestic means not just the U.S. and the U.S. territories, but all that has been reported. Now, here's the thing about a adverse event report. An adverse event report is voluntary, so it depends on whether a nurse, a doctor would want to make a report. A lot of them don't, and it's simply because it's time consuming and they do not have a lot of time. And there is also always a risk that, in the atmosphere that we're living in, there's a risk that they could lose their employment if they are talking about this. And there was actually some Project Veritas did some undercover work on that was very telling, with a Health and Human Services employee that was videoing the suppression of letting this information be reported. So, but let's go through it. Let's go through the statistics that what we have. So actually, let's just take the U.S. territories, okay? Since we're, you can just take the U.S. territories. Now, I'm breaking out my handy-dandy calculator here. I'm going to do some math while we're on the show. So we have, just so that we can see what we're talking about here, in the U.S. and U.S. territories, there have been 732,882 reports. These are adverse event reports, vaccine adverse events reports. Now, people got vaccinated, something bad happened, And they reported, and it was reported. It has to be reported not just by any old regular average Joe. It has to be reported by medical personnel. Okay, so that's why this data is not fictitious. It's data that comes through Health and Human Services. So through January 14th, just about 12 days ago, through January 14th, 2022, there have been 732,882 vaccine adverse event reports in the United States and U.S. territories. Of those, here you go, of those reports, there have been, out of 732,882, there have been 10,162 deaths, 49,167 hospitalizations, 91,178 urgent cares, 143,589 doctor office visits. Then there's been 2,273 cases of anaphylaxis, 3,007 cases of Bell's palsy, 1,569 cases of miscarriages, 4,988 cases of heart attacks, 11,861 permanently disabled. Are you kidding me? 4,710 myocarditis, or pericarditis, 1,477 thrombocytopenia, low platelet stuff, 11,398 life-threatening situations, 28,682 severe allergic reaction, and 7,177 cases of shingles. Do you remember Dr. Paul Offit's comment per million? He said per million doses, 15 cases of severe permanent side effects, and 1 death is unacceptable. But yet here we are mandating everybody. We are mandating. They're wanting to mandate. Thank God for the Supreme Court. Okay? Thank God for the Supreme Court that shut the mandates down. But worldwide, they're still pushing this stuff. So let's go with the percentage. 10,162. This is deaths, okay? Divided by 732,882 equals a 0.013 chance of dying, which is actually, you ready for this? It's higher than your chance of dying from just getting COVID. So according to the statistics, and if you go to all the reports, it actually goes higher. If you go to all the reports, if you include not just the U.S. territories, but you include worldwide what has been reported, which is 1,053,000 reports. If you take the deaths, which is 22,193, and you divide it by 1,053,828 reports, it's 2%, 0.021%. You have a higher chance. You have a higher chance of dying from the vaccine. I mean, this is insane. You have a higher chance of dying from the vaccine than you do dying of COVID itself. And that is unbelievable. Now, here's what's interesting. What has happened? My question is, what has happened to the medical and scientific community? Because they keep telling us, "Hey, follow the science." You know, follow. It's almost like they're insulting you. You know, if you question what they say, "Well, you know, just follow the science," and that is just insane. It's right. Michelle's saying 10,000 deaths on a vaccine that just hit the market. Remember back to my comment about drugs that have been recalled after years of being on the shelf? This thing hasn't even been out years. I mean, we're talking, it's brand spanking new. We're the guinea pigs, folks. Wake up and realize it. Wake up and realize that we're the guinea pigs on this. And we have over 10,000 deaths. This is just the those that have been reported, folks. Who knows what the real numbers actually are? But the point is, we would never accept a drug like that. We would never accept a drug like that. Dr. Paul Offit certainly wouldn't 20 years ago. But something has happened to the medical and the scientific community, because according to Offit, that rate of death, if he couldn't accept one per million of smallpox, the rate of death of, 10,000 per 732,000 doses, and not even counting all the other numbers of disability. Some of them aren't deaths, but they're permanently disabled, heart attacks, Bell's palsy. It would be completely unacceptable. So here, let's fast forward to now. The same doctor, you listening to me now? The same doctor, Dr. Paul Offit, voted to approve these COVID vaccines for kids at the October 26 VRB PAC meeting, because he refuses to look at the safety analysis that is coming from 8 different sources. Offit actually thinks nobody has died or been permanently disabled by these vaccines. I mean, really? Are you kidding me? I will tell you personally, every person that I know, friends of mine that have been vaccinated, I asked them, and they're telling me, every last one of them is telling me, I'm not the same as I was. I can't get through what I used to get through. My body is not the same. I'm having problems that I didn't have before. And you know what should really make people mad over all of that is it doesn't even protect you from getting COVID. I was reading something here. Let me see if it's in this article or not. But here's the truth. Let's look at how the definition of things has changed. Before things were defined in one way, but now it's changing. For example, there's this it's actually it's madness, folks. A vaccination pre-2015, okay? The definition of a vaccination was an injection of a killed or weakened infectious organism in order to prevent the disease. Prevent it. I mean, it has no power. Vaccination, 2015 to 2021, the definition was the act of introducing a vaccine into the body to produce immunity to a specific disease. Okay. Pre-2015, prevention. Post-2015, immunity. But vaccination from September 2021 forward, the definition is the act of introducing a vaccine into the body to produce protection from a specific disease. So the definitions are changing. This vaccine doesn't prevent it, doesn't make you immune. All it does is maybe possibly your symptoms won't be quite as bad as they would have been otherwise. So that's insane. This stuff is being pushed on us, and they're changing the definitions as they go. So Paul Offit, who would not accept one death per million doses of smallpox vaccines as a good standard, will accept, 400 times more or 800 times more dangerous of a vaccine. Offit thinks this. He literally thinks nobody's died from the vaccine or been permanently disabled by the vaccines. That would be like me saying, well, Mr. Offit, nobody's died of COVID. They haven't died of COVID. They got COVID and they died of their comorbidities, diabetes, heart failure, or high blood pressure. Be the same argument, right? So Paul Offit literally thinks that there is not a single death caused by the vaccine. I don't know what hill of sand he's got his head stuck in, but it's impossible. There is, multiple data that is showing the opposite to be true. The sad thing is, none of them want to investigate it. None of them want to look at it. Why? Because it does not help their narrative. Now, I'm going to read you one more thing. My time just flew today, but I'm going to read you something that I read in an article, and it says this. It's quoting Strauss and Howe on a book called The Fourth, or an idea called The Fourth Turning. It says this, says, try to unlearn the obsessive fear of death and the anxious quest for death avoidance that pervades linear thinking in nearly every modern society. The ancients knew that. Without periodic decay and death, nature cannot complete its full round of biological and social change. Without plant death, weeds would strangle the forest. Without human death, memories would never die, and unbroken habits and customs would strangle civilization. Social institutions require no less. Just as floods replenish soil and fires rejuvenate forests, a fourth turning clears out society's exhausted elements and creates an opportunity. Do you know what they're actually talking about? They're talking about the promotion of death. Okay? Sometimes there just needs to be a dying. There needs to be that, so that society's exhausted elements it can be cleared out and create an opportunity. Later on, it says this, talking about what's going to happen. Institutions will be increasingly bossy. We're seeing that. Limiting personal freedoms, chastising bad manners, and cleansing the culture. Powerful new civic organizations will make judgments about which individual rights deserve respect and which do not. So it's no longer your rights. They're going to decide. Criminal justice will become swift and rough, trampling on some innocents to protect an endangered and desperate society from those feared to be guilty. Expect a loss of personal privacy. Fourth turnings can be dark times for the free spirit. Just as one kind of official may have new authority to do something for you, another kind, some very hastily deputized magistrate, may have new authority to do something to you. Another quote, the globalist elite want to keep the fear of at a high level, to institute their global reset, where you will own nothing and be happy, according to them, or you will be brought to heel by the truncheon. So if you want to know what's really going on, is how on earth are we allowing them to push this thing, these mandates? How on earth are we allowing, you're talking like countries like Australia with quarantine camps. Look at what happened with Novak Djokovic being deported, the number one tennis player in the world, being deported because of his status. We have never before. I talked to a pastor from Germany just the other day, and he said it is so restricted. It is just so hard to get anything done. And it has nothing. I'm going to end with this, okay? All of this has nothing to do with their interest in your health or in saving the world from this disease. Nothing to do with that. If that was true, they would have let the therapeutics that worked way back when this started, they would have let those be used, and they wouldn't be mandating a vaccine that is the most dangerous vaccine in the world. Now, you go do what you want to do, okay? I am not anti-vaccine. I'm anti-mandate. I was vaccinated for smallpox, and guess what? It's still working until today. I haven't had to have 500,000 boosters for it to work. But I will say something. You need to wake up and understand that there is a big push that has nothing to do with your health. It has to do with control, and it has to do with you just when they're saying follow the science, what they're saying is you just have to obey what we say and don't question it. And if you question it, then you get cussed at, like our president cussed at a reporter. What a low class thing to do. He cussed at a reporter because the reporter asked him a question on inflation. So that's where we're at now. If you question anything, you're a bad person. Can't do that. So, man, it flew by. It's already 10 o'clock. I needed a couple more hours. to get through all this. But please understand what's going on. Pay attention to the Jewish aspect there in Ukraine, and just realize that we're in a battle, and you need to educate yourself, inform yourself, so that you can make good decisions. God bless you. Thank you for being with me on the Ryan Crossley Show. God bless America. I love this country, love God, and hopefully we can keep preaching the gospel freely for many more years to come. Have a great Wednesday. We'll see you next week right here on the Ryan Crossley Show.